from day one here on. Oh, you weren't recording?
No, I hit you. I hit it in the middle.
Oh, shit. Well, we're going to do the topic we should have done since day one here on Thanks for Riding. Infrastructure. You know, this happened at a recent visit to Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, Virginia. I realized that when it comes to U.S. or regional parks, the regional parks around the country, I know we've definitely touched on this before, the fact that most of the regional parks in the United States they pretty much all opened within about a 5-year period, which is kind of crazy. But basically somewhere around, it's like between 1972 and 1977, or is it 71 and 76? It's something like that. That's when most of them opened. A couple of outliers earlier and later, but for the most part, most of them are in that zone. And what that means is that they're all now at about the same time, simultaneously, they're all about ready to turn 50 in the next 5 years coming up. And with that, a lot of the infrastructure, the foundation that makes the park possible, it's getting old. You know, it's all hitting. It's all 40 plus years old, pretty much. Some exceptions with when they've added new lands and new areas, expanded. So then some of that stuff's a little newer, but by and large, the majority of the heart of the parks are getting old. So infrastructure, okay, we're going to talk about it, but through this lens, which is really the only reason why I want to talk about it, because I think it's interesting. Because I think there's some honest to goodness questions out there now of, what are parks going to do? And I don't think that they will all do the same thing. I think we might see a few differing strategies now in upcoming years. And I think it's going to be interesting to watch. But what are they going to do? Because there's just a lot of that infrastructure now that it's getting old that needs more than the coat of paint that most regional parks, that's the extent of what they've done to a lot of their buildings, a lot of their bathrooms, and again, we'll talk like the pavement and the curbs and stuff, especially where they've done nothing, a lot of parks, to any of that. But it's getting to the point where it's kind of a tipping point. It's kind of like something needs to be done because just to keep this stuff viable. So Busch Williamsburg kind of sparked it for me, but also our recent visit to Great Adventure, Six Flags Great Adventure, also kind of continued it in my mind. There specifically was a big problem with pavement, where it's getting really shitty and just cracked and old, and more than cracks, giant full gaps at this point at different sections. And it's just like, wow, what's going to happen? And this really, I do want to talk about this. This is going to really be regional park focused, and there's a reason for that. Universal parks are not nearly as old as. They're not anywhere near 50 like we're talking about. They opened the 2 parks, I guess 3 if you include Volcano Bay now. But the 2 theme parks, the major regular parks, opened in the 90s and then, 90s?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then Volcano Bay is very new. And then Disney is kind of an outlier in their own respect. They actually are the one place, especially Disneyland, which is the oldest of the park that I guess kind of started modern theme parks, more or less, with respect to Dick Knott there, and their claims. They're very old, but they're well past 50 now. But they do completely renovate structures and pavement and pretty much anything. But that's why this conversation is about regional parks, because regional parks really have not. You don't see that. You don't see them just isolate a building, and even if it is a really iconic building for that park, they still just kind of let it go. Again, minimal maintenance, little one stone or brick came out here and they fix it, or the coat of paint that I mentioned already. But like you're not seeing like the real, we're putting up a scaffolding around the whole thing and we're doing all that intense, that pointed brickwork, and we're totally refreshing and replacing and whatever we have to do, and we're not really redoing it, but just it's going to come back the way it still looked the same, just brand new again. Regional parks, really, it's down to if they have rethemed an area, then that building might get an entire facelift of the new theme thrown on top of it, and then that's an excuse, and they do it then. If a building, or even that's an excuse to repave or re-landscape areas. But if it's not a new land or a overlay of a land, you're really not seeing it. Not to any extent that it's that noticeable anyway. And so the question then is, what are these parks going to do going forward? Because, and I think we're going to do that now. We'll point out some of the areas that we're seeing where the parks are, where the things are getting noticeably dilapidated. Well, let's start with Great Adventure, because we just both did that. And we just both did it this season, 2021. And I think that's a great example. Great Six Flags Great Adventure, it's that part of that series of parks we're talking about. They opened in 1974. I think for that park in particular, it is the pavement that might be the worst thing right now. That's one of those weird things where you don't think about it when you're not there, but then you go there. But it's falling apart at Great Adventure. It's getting bad. There's the seams where the different sections meet. Again, there's giant gaps. There's areas where there's just like potholes. And it just like, it brings about the concept, like, well, what is a park like Great Adventure going to do? I don't think, they've done a lot of rethemed areas, but, I don't think they're just going to retheme. It's mostly it's like that whole Fantasy Forest and Dream Street original kind of concept areas that aren't even really used. Those names aren't even really used much anymore by the park, but that's all where it's falling apart. And like, I don't think they're going to retheme those whole areas to justify repaving. So it's like, at some point, if you really want to keep your park looking beautiful and keep the guest experience high, it's not exciting and you really can't advertise it in the brochure, but you have to just kind of put the money out and just say, all right, we're just repaving a lot of the park this year. But will regional parks make that choice? And then what's the tipping point there? I mean, how bad does it have to get before it just turns to dirt before you're going to finally like redo it? It's interesting.
Yeah, that was one thing that I was going to bring up, which is parks are going to have to put more money into their aging infrastructure, and that takes money away from new rides and from other, new exciting things that they want to do. But, these are necessary things, expenses to keep the park functional, to keep the park going, like redoing pavement or, redoing a whole building if you have to, or a part of it. You don't have to do all of your infrastructure revamping or refurbishing, in 1 year. You spread it out as much as you can, as long as the structures are safe and the pavement is still safe to walk on and all that stuff. But maybe, you focus on certain areas at a time, like redoing the pavement. I know in Great Adventure, it's the area by the old fort, which is really kind of bad over there. This stuff costs a lot of money. And then they have to make a decision. Do they want to keep the structure? Or do they want to replace it? Or what?
I don't think these buildings at the regional parks are built as quality, as the buildings at Disney are, kind of thing. At least not today. I think when Disneyland was first built, it was no better than like the way Great Adventure was first built. But that's just Disneyland, and that's just that first period, like the 50s into the early 60s. And then it was such a success, and then they started upgrading their quality pretty quick. And even by the time they already were building Disney World, I think they were building the more upgraded versions of structures. Mm-hmm. So there is more, all right, maybe that's to be fair. There is a lot more real brickwork and things maybe to put scaffolds up and have skilled crews. That's like a masonry crew come in and do this kind of work. Whereas like the fort is just like all wood, I think, and it's cheaper. The Great Adventure's fort structure that goes around it is the station for the Skyride and not Log Flume, the Mine Train. And they did do that. I remember when they put a new roof on Best of the West across the way from the fort. because it's not as themed. It used to be like it was all real logs, and now it has like a metal roof.
Oh, okay.
So they did do that too at some point. And then also all in that same area, there was two other structures where I guess they made the call just to tear them down. There was the giant teepee and the giant Conestoga wagon. And rather than figure out how to redo those, they just tore them down.
Yeah, I did read recently that the Super TP was not really safe anymore. It got to the point where it became sort of a dangerous structure. So they just had to close it, and then they just decided to demolish it.
So, all right, Great Adventure has had to make some tough decisions already.
Well, what about Hershey Park? You know, they redid their whole entrance. Do you think part of that was because it was just too old?
Oh, I do think so. And this is cool because we didn't talk about this. I think when we talked about that, I ranted for like 20 minutes. I really rented for like an hour, and it got cut down to 20 minutes in editing. But I do think some of the major problems were there was a bottleneck going on, and there wasn't enough turnstiles to get the crowds in because the park has become more popular over the years, over the decades. And Hershey Park is not a park where the park proper opened in the 70s, but at the same time, it really kind of did because they became the Hershey that you know today really started in right around, I think it was like actually maybe 69, 70, when they put in the monorail and the Kissing Tower, and they actually put fences around the park and made it a one gate park. So they kind of joined that trend at that time. And that's when that whole Tudor Square and Rhineland area was built. It was all like right around 1970. So in addition to those other issues I think they were trying to address, I do also, I know because someone who doesn't have as much nostalgia for that park, Coaster Cat, when I would go with her, and she'd point out like the restaurant that it was Hershey Park Place in those last days. She'd point out how it had like a musty smell to the dining room. And I guess I didn't see it that way because I had nostalgia for it, but okay, and I think the gift shops were the same thing. They were all getting kind of musty. So I guess there was probably roof leaks and maybe even leaks through the walls. Again, the buildings were done, I think, pretty well, but at the same time, and I think they looked really good on the outside. But again, I'm sure that probably was just cheaper plywood structures, and they get old, and then they're getting leaks and they smell, and that kind of thing was happening. So I do think actually that was probably part of Hershey's decision to get rid of all those, to kind of all right, we got to do something. And then the idea grows from there. Then if we're going to do something, we also might as well make it wider and, be able to accommodate the bigger crowds. And then, rather than just tear each one of those gift shops down one at a time and just rebuild it in the same spot, it became well, let's just do a whole new thing. So they actually figured out how to take at least one section of the park, the entrance, and turn it into something that you could advertise. So it was just that whole, then they added a ride to it as well. They tacked a ride onto it to make it more lucrative. But really, besides the ride, Candemonium, it really was just an infrastructure upgrade and but that's a way you could kind of spin it and sell it as something big. And also that Spring Creek that runs through the park, which I know has caused flooding problems in the past. Actually, I don't even know if it's new with this project, but now you can definitely see it. There's like a dam. But it looks like they definitely did also do more rock work and stuff, I think, for future flooding and drainage issues. It kind of gave them the excuse to do all that shit. So it's kind of one of those where it ended up fixing or addressing like 5 or 6 different issues in this one project. So I think that's a good example. That's where a park did do something to a whole section of the park.
Park entrances, like redoing a park entrance, is something you can actually advertise, an infrastructure thing you can advertise, as opposed to redoing the bathrooms or something, because that is something that Cedar Fair has done in more recent years. With Cedar Point, kind of redid their entrance. They redid their ticket booths and all that. And Carowinds, same thing. And
and in both cases, they kind of tacked that on. It was a new ride, really, and they kind of tacked on the entrance to that, because then the ride would go over the entrance and sort of became part of it.
Yeah, and Worlds of Fun, I think, also redid their entrance.
And I guess it's also is all relative to how the park has approached this type of thing over all these decades, because we know the park well, but it also is just one of those examples of a park that hasn't done a lot of infrastructure budgeting, and that is Great Adventure, because they have a lot that's really getting to be really in bad shape. But there are other parks that have not let things go quite as long. Even if you do just the smaller things, like just some roof shingles and just some paint here and there, and just replacing the weather seals and whatever and the gutters, that stuff can go a long way. And there's other parks that have just at least done those small things throughout the decades, so their stuff isn't in as bad a shape as they're hitting 50, even though they may not have done a full refresh. Again, that Disney style refresh, they're at a better place. Another park, Six Flags Magic Mountain, is a park that's let their shit go way too much, and a lot of that park looks really shitty.
Yeah,
I remember we were shocked the last time we were there.
Yeah, they're bad with that. Yeah,
it's like the wood boards are just rotting away and shit, and just right in full plain sight.
Yeah, Six Flags in general, it seems like they only address infrastructure issues when they absolutely need to, and otherwise they just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, it does seem like they have that approach. They're the we'll wait until it fully breaks and then we'll deal with it.
Yeah, they do a lot of patching here and there.
Yeah, Cedar Fair is definitely better at staying on top of that stuff.
Yeah, their parks always have a pretty clean and neat look.
You know, and that probably has to be the better strategy.
Well, of course. I mean, it's like, do you want your guests to walk in the place and think, wow, this place is kind of run down, looking really shabby, or do you want them to like not think about it and just get the feeling that it's a neat, clean place and everything looks, pretty fresh?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, from that angle, for sure. Although, obviously, that's, Six Flags just doesn't really care. They're not taking pride in their look as much as they should. But also, just financially, I think, even, because I think, it's just like the way you would run your own house. If you do the maintenance throughout, you actually end up spending less money than if you wait for whole things to break down or a whole section of your roof to cave in, and then finally address it. Then you're actually going to end up spending more money overall in the same amount of time. All the more reason why it's hard to imagine why any business would operate that way. So the Six Flags parks definitely are probably the worst place going into like each of their respective 50ths of like just really having a lot that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's that Six Flags just they like don't actually want to spend the money on it, or they're just always thinking about that they just forget about it. Like are they purposely saying screw infrastructure, or do they forget about it? I guess is really what I'm asking. I wonder.
I don't know. It's really interesting. It's clear that the Busch Gardens parks spend a lot more money on their infrastructure, just on landscaping alone, right? The whole Williamsburg, especially the whole most beautiful park golden ticket thing. Golden tickets in themselves are kind of bullshit, but
which it
is a very beautiful
this
park
year, by the way.
Oh, but just historically, right now, still, right? You could see that what Busch does with infrastructure and what Six Flags does with infrastructure, but then you could also look over the years and see how the Six Flags parks have added probably twice the number of rides. You know, if you isolate any decade, let's say the 90s or the 2000s, versus the Busch Gardens parks, which always kept the modest small number of roller coasters at any one time, 4, 5, 6 tops. Now they're going a little higher than that now, but it's newer, it's new ownership, it's changing. But you could probably, and this is where I said we're not prepared. We'd have to do that between Six Flags and Cedar Fair. Because is Cedar Fair really actually that much slower to add stuff than Six Flags, and diverted more budget? That's how they keep themselves cleaner.
I want to say no.
Without studying it, it feels like the answer is no, right? Like the answer is no. They've pretty much always been keeping up with each other with the number of additions, and yet somehow Cedar Fair still manages to still have themselves come out in a better spot on infrastructure. So what does that mean? Are they just taking less profit? Like, where's that other money going in Six Flags?
Yeah.
I mean, Six Flags is the bigger company. We've established that in different episodes we've done, whether it be attendance or they are the bigger company, and they do generate, I think, more money than Cedar Fair does. They have more parks. But that is an interesting question of where that, if they're about the same, and we think they mostly are in new additions, then yeah, where does that other money? What's happening? Where's the disconnect? Why does Six Flags parks look dilapidated and Cedar Fair parks still, by and large, look really nice?
I would love to know the answer. I don't know.
It's really interesting.
I don't know how, I don't think we can find that out just on our own, like not being a higher up in the companies, but...
So, I don't know. Yeah, we're not going to know without talking to someone. I don't know.
But, I'll say this. We say Six Flags is seemingly the worst with infrastructure. But then, on the opposite end, which I think Disneyland is the opposite of that, where they spend a ton of money on infrastructure. And Disneyland specifically, not even Disney World, and not even California Adventure, like just Disneyland, is like constantly under construction. They're always doing something, redoing the pavement or redoing a building or something. But it's like, I think it's like too much, where it's like something is always down or some scaffolding is always up. It's, we said this years ago though, where like, at least for the foreseeable future, it's like, you're never going to be able to go to that park with everything open.
Yeah.
With every ride open and just like nothing under construction, because they're always tweaking it. And it's like, it's to the point where are a lot of these, tweaks and upgrades and stuff and refurbishments, are they necessary? I have no idea. But some of it seems like you guys are going overboard with this shit.
Well, I don't know.
Like to the point where like, I feel like it actually is detracting from the guest's experience. Not in a huge way, not, I think, in as big of a way as Six Flags ignoring, infrastructure upgrades and such. I don't think it's a great thing that the way Disneyland, just is always tweaking their stuff.
When you're open all year round, it's tough because there's
true.
There's no time when there's no guests coming through there. It's a good problem to have, I guess. Is it one of those? It's just like I'd rather they keep addressing the stuff than let it go.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's what I had just said. That it's not as bad as just letting all that stuff go, like Six Flags tends to do. And now,
as long as they're doing something, it's good.
Yeah, and there is a balance. I think the Busch parks, at least they did. It's hard to say these days because they change CEOs like every 10 minutes. But at least they did have that good middle ground where they definitely kept up all their buildings and their walkways and all that stuff, but not to the point where something was always under scaffolding. But you do bring up a good point where Disneyland is open year round, so that is harder. Does make things harder.
More regional parks are now doing the same thing,
or just trying to be open as long as they possibly can.
I mean, Busch Tampa already was. That Busch Williamsburg now is year round. Magic Mountain is now year round.
Williamsburg is year round? I didn't know that.
Williamsburg is year round now, yeah. It started last year.
Crap. Okay.
Which means it didn't really start because they weren't open all season anyway for 2020. So 21 will be the first year.
Wow. Okay.
But that being said, they are only doing weekends through the slow seasons. January, February, March, it's pretty much just weekends. The year-round schedule of the regionals that's kind of a newer thing is still not the same as the year-round schedule of Disney and Universal.
Okay, that's true.
They still have at least 5-day weeks, where they can get other shit done when there's no one in the park, for a bunch of months. Yeah, with Busch, with Busch Williamsburg, having had such a long history with that place, I don't know, I don't know how much of it is the change in ownership, how much of it is just how old the park is getting. I know I said this to you off the show, to put everything in context. The first time that we went to Busch Gardens Williamsburg, the park was only, again, I think 18 years old. The park now is more than double that. So by its very nature, things are going to look older because they are. Even if they've been doing decent jobs of keeping it painted and doing some repair jobs at the corners here and there and things like that, still, it's just now everything's almost 50.
It's like California Adventure is older now than Busch was when we first went there.
Yeah, shocking. A park that I think of as a new park.
Yeah.
a newer park.
Right, we were talking
Same
about
thing.
this.
Islands of Adventure, same thing.
Right. I think of those as new parks still, which is, I know that's my problem. But in my brain, I think of them as new parks, even though they've been around for a long time now.
Over 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, with these, a lot of these regionals getting over that 50-year hump. Are we going to see a lot of changes in the buildings or the pavement or, all the infrastructure stuff? I don't know, or not.
Well, yeah, it's almost like, all right, what's going to happen? So are they just going to get even more dilapidated looking in the next decade or two? Obviously, we don't want to see that. That'd really suck. Are they going to actually have to start kind of taking a page out of Disney's book and just, we want to keep this. It's an icon of, it's Banbury Cross. It's the Big Ben remake and the way the look of these buildings. But we're going to have to just put the money in and get some real professionals in here and really redo this. King's Dominion did do that, actually, International Street, just like 2 or 3 years ago, didn't they? Just before the pandemic. They
Something
did
like
a
that.
refresh.
That was King's Dominion? That wasn't King's Island.
That was Dominion. And I will say, because it's on the way to Busch, we went there briefly, just like a stop in. It does look noticeably better than King's Island. As much as it's like half the scale, half the size, and everything, it does look better. Though you can tell that a lot of work went into it, and it looks really good. So it's not, it's not impossible. Parks, I guess, will make that choice. Some of them will. I hope Busch Williamsburg is one that does too, to kind of do those big refreshes. And you can try to advertise it a little bit, I guess, make what you can out of it. Because then the other choice is this is the Hershey. Then you have to just take whole sections and mow them down and make it into something else so we could advertise that. Now, it's Chocolate Town now. So it's not England anymore. It's New England. And it's all northeastern U.S. themed because it's New England or something, whatever. But it's gonna be, we just gotta tear it all down and start from scratch because that's the only way we can justify this. We can't justify putting this money out just to keep it the same way.
Yeah, well, it seems like either way they're going to have to spend some money, and it'll be interesting to see if I'm not going to say that we're not going to get new rides, but there might be longer gaps between new rides, or maybe not a big flashy new coaster or something less expensive. Well, that could really alter parks ride lineups in the near future.
It's already kind of happened. I mean, the pandemic kind of happened, or did happen, and then what's kind of happened is. There's no doubt about it. We're going to see bigger gaps, or at least a big gap at this moment between major new attractions. But then, even when everything picks back up to full steam again, whenever that may be, a year, maybe next year, maybe a couple years, then this infrastructure thing might hit, where it's like, oh, now we still have to kind of keep our gaps longer because at least every other year we have to do some kind of major infrastructure project.
Yeah.
But I mean, it'll be good in the long run.
Oh yeah, it's stuff that needs to be done.
Necessary.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do about it. It's necessary.
Right.
I mean, one area where parks have universally have been pretty good across the board, not Universal Studios, but is bathrooms. I think that's one of the areas where most parks have redone the interior of at least a couple of the bathrooms, depending on the park. Some of them all. And then some of them, maybe there's been a few they've isolated and they did those. It's hard to find a park that hasn't touched their bathrooms since 1975.
I wonder if Kennywood still has old bathrooms. Because I remember that the last time we were there, which was...
Oh, no.
When was this?
2014.
Okay, all right, so that's a number of years ago now. But those bathrooms, at least the one bathroom, sort of like across from Jackrabbit, I think, is still, that was pretty old and pretty shitty.
It's stuck in 1950 or something. Yeah, there's all plywood stall doors that are rotting and you pee in a trough for the guys at least, and maybe the girls too, for all I know. Just squat over a trough, let it all hang out. Because that's what it was. It was just the troughs, the old school systems of carting the urine away. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Knoebels is kind of like that.
Yeah, Canolas has older
They don't
bathrooms
have
too.
the troughs, but it's like it's the things that I only ever before that had only ever seen like in my elementary school. It's the urinal that goes to the floor,
Oh
or like
yeah,
you pee on the floor, or I guess you could kind of pee against the wall of it, which is
yeah.
I guess what I usually end up doing, and it just trickles down onto the floor, leaks down, kind of gross. Those are just like gross, and there's more area to get urine on and smell. It's just like I don't know why that was ever a thing.
Maybe it's good for little kids, but
Well, it's really you can't be too tall for it or too short for it.
yeah.
Ah, I said the wrong thing. You can't be too short for it.
But the stalls have like saloon doors, which is weird too.
Oh, that's right. They're just on the spring
just-
hinges.
yeah.
Yeah. Old park bathrooms.
I mean, those are some.
But yeah, but
specific
there's no
examples.
but like I'm sure there's a possibility that the regional parks in the 70s might have had bathrooms like that, even the ones we think of as bigger parks. But they've all upgraded since then. And you have just these nostalgia parks like a Kennywood or a Knoebels that still have those old bathrooms. But then no Six Flags Park or Cedar Fair has something like that.
But one time at Disneyland, there was no door in that stall.
Yep. We're waiting for that guy who just had to go. Like, I don't care. I gotta go. Just drop trow and just turn around and just sit down and go. Oh God. I had one of their awful burgers. I gotta go.
That was very strange. Just like one, it was like whatever, a row of 3 stalls or something, and then but one of them didn't have a door on it.
That's the best quality experience for you. All right. Was there anything else to bring up there?
I on the surface this sounds like a tedious, boring topic, but it's going to impact everyone's day at the park because I'm not of course you need infrastructure to have a park, but it'll be really through the lens of all these parks aging and getting kind of old. It'll be interesting to see how they handle it because most of the structures and I'm guessing like all of the plumbing and sewer work and most of the pavement and the curbs and all that stuff that's original from when the park opened for the most part.
Well, you bring that up. Yeah, we're talking really about the stuff that we as guests see when we're there. Not even to mention, right, all the stuff buried underground, all the electrical and the plumbing and stuff that I really can't recall a story hitting anything major at this point, but like how long before that, a pipe bursts at Kings Island, and it's just something weird like that. Like something that you think of as only happening in a big city. Mm-hmm. But like eventually, I guess something like that would happen, right? I mean,
well, yeah, it gets old.
A sewer pipe underground or something is going to burst and like raw sewage is going to flood the old mill at Kennywood Kennywood's already a really old park.
It couldn't just be water, it had to be raw sewage.
No, it had to be raw sewage. Okay. Got a whole lagoon of this crud in the back.
All right.
Toxic waste. But yeah, you have a raw sewage flume. Raw sewage log flume all over the sawmill log flume at Great Adventure. Or just like electrical going out to a whole section of the park and then they trace it back to a problem with an underground line and they have to go and dig and replace it. Sure.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, stuff, codes get upgraded. Or I should say the codes get updated, and maybe you go and try and fix what you think is a simple problem, something to do with your plumbing, but then you go in there and you get told, oh, wait a second, all this is out of code now. You got to update all of it. It's just like you could run into shit like that as you get older.
It's interesting. It's going to be interesting. It's going to get interesting.
You said the stuff. There's all this stuff that the guests don't see, and there's also, I just want to mention, there's backstage buildings too that are included in all of this.
Oh, sure. We saw some of that in movies, like the great movie Roller Coaster, when George Segal is in that backstage building, and that building is really there. It's still there to this day. You can still see it.
Okay, there you
go. What I was going to bring up, because I'm thinking about it now in terms of, or just as a comparison, hotels, a business that I know well. And you could probably also throw this into restaurants, kind of hotels and restaurants, same kind of thing. There are some times where an old building is renovated, but when you start talking about half a century and up, more times than not, an old hotel closes, the building is razed, and a new building is built. But I guess when you think about cost and scale, it's easier to do that. Definitely a restaurant that's smallish a lot of times. Even hotels, like your average chain hotel, like a Hampton Inn, that kind of it's 3 or 4 floors. It's still not out of the question. Let's tear something down and let's build something new. Or in some cases, they just leave old motels rotting along the highways and they just find some undeveloped area and they build the new hotel there. But, what's going to happen? What's the tipping point? Like, would that happen with amusement parks? Do you get to a point where it's like, this shit is so rotted under the ground and like we talked about the plumbing and the electric and stuff like that. Is it more cost effective and lucrative to just abandon that park and build a new one a couple miles down the road? Like, is that something that would ever happen?
No.
No.
I can't see that happening.
That's too extreme, you think, for parks. And also because parks are kind of exceed, I think, the size, the scale, the cost. Because at this, we know from like what Universal is doing and stuff, like parks, a new park at this point is like, starts at $1 billion.
Oh, geez, yeah.
Like you're out of the millions pretty much. You're in the billions.
Yeah.
So I don't think, I guess Six Flags, even if they were just going to do it, for one of their parks, like, our oldest one is over Texas. Do they have the money for that? And probably not.
Yeah, I just wanted to get a little point of reference. Like Hard Rock Park, cost about $225 million to build, but that was back in like the mid 2000s, and and it was a smaller park.
All right, so maybe $1 billion. Maybe we haven't gotten there yet.
Well, no. I think maybe Disney or Universal. I think it is up to that level.
Okay, but that's because they are doing things at their standards, which are higher than what a regional park would do. Yeah. So maybe it cost them $1 billion. Maybe you could build a regional, a decent regional park, like a Busch Williamsburg, maybe for, maybe $500 million, maybe $500 million.
Maybe, yeah.
But still, that's $500 million.
Yeah.
And, that's not money that, these giant companies have laying around. Yeah, all right, so that's just a ridiculous notion. Well, then they're going to have a lot to deal with.
And it's not like with these regional parks, it's not like you're going to go one season and all of a sudden all the buildings or even half the buildings are brand new or something. It's like they're going to do all this stuff piecemeal. So it's, it's a gradual thing. They're not just going to blow a bajillion dollars, in 1 year to upgrade everything all at once. It's like, it just happens over time. It's just that a lot of this stuff is potentially going to need to be addressed all in a very concentrated point in time. So we'll see how they deal with that.
I mean, in the end, I think it will be a mixed bag. I think we'll see a little bit of all these strategies.
Yeah, well, hopefully, hopefully a lot of these parks, or all of these parks really, are having this same conversation and are forming a plan and a strategy to deal with it as it comes up.
I wish, but I don't think so. They're all talking about how soon can we get our next 4D free spin?
Sure, yeah.
The regular one? No, the smaller one.
Right. What am I made of money? Get the small one.
Yeah. Get the one made for small parks. But we're a major park off 95. I don't care. It's replacing Volcano. Nobody cared about that. But yes, they need to be talking about this. Yeah, well, I truly think that's why Volcano is gone. That was, I think it was the mountain. Because we saw it.
Oh, more than the ride itself.
That thing was just crumbling apart.
It was.
Yeah, the fake concrete mountain. And it had to get to that tipping point where it was about to become unsafe. There was probably a danger of really large chunks of concrete starting to come off that thing. It probably would have been about end of its life around now anyway, but when they made it into Volcano, I think they possibly even took some years off its life. The structure, I mean. Because they had to punch holes in all areas that really it wasn't designed to have holes punched into it.
Yeah.
Put all those supports that, for whatever reason, that roller coaster had more supports than any coaster ever. It was the most ridiculous amount of supports. So yeah, they definitely weakened the mountain even more, and that just had to go. Oh, parks are getting old. It's like we're getting old and the parks are getting old. So anyway, I don't know what this really accomplished in the end, but I think it was interesting to think about. All right. Thank you for listening. Thanks for riding.